I am to introduce to you a bit of information about a project that we've been doing on safe urban logistics. SAFE is an acronym for Scandinavian Analysis of Urban Freight Logistics with Electric Vehicles, which is very easy to say once you've tried it a couple of hundred times, but therefore the short name SAFE. But before I go into the results of our project, I would like to just show you a little video, and I have to admit, are there anyone from Nissan here? Good, because I have stolen a video from Nissan without even asking. So I was hoping, when the presentation was made on Nissan today, I feared that, no, I'm not afraid of anything. Yeah, it's on video. No, but it's on YouTube. The video is taken directly from YouTube, and I use it in a good way, in an academic way as well. So I think I have my back covered. I'll just show you the video, and then I'll tell you why I want to show this very good commercial.
What if everything ran on gas? Then again, what if everything didn't? The 100% electric, zero gas Nissan Leaf. Innovation for the planet, innovation for all.
So I'm glad to see that a couple of you laughed when you saw the drilling machine at the dentist. My purpose of showing you this video is that it's very clear when we look at the products they display here, the products we have in our everyday life, if they were to run on gas, they would most definitely not look like that. If we then turn the world around and look at what happens then if something that has always been running on gas turns electric, things changes. And so do possibilities, so do opportunities, how to utilize it, how to see what new possibilities of business, what new ways of earning money will happen based on this technology. And this is actually what safe urban logistics is about. These are the four things that I'd like to talk to you about. It's a bit about the project, a bit about how logistics looks in the Nordic countries. Most of you people here are experts on this, so I'll do it shortly. And then I will try to give you 4 different views on how the future could look like when we look at urban logistics. And a couple of new possibilities already being tried out on early stages, but that could be integrated into some of the businesses here today. So, why do a project on urban logistics? Well, basically this graph tells you why. Logistics is becoming more and more expensive due to increase in costs of gasoline and diesel. And this is what you see here. That's just one of the reasons, but it's a very significant reason. So we have this very nice title of a project that wanted to go and see how can we look at logistics in cities in a new way. It's funded by Northern Energy and Transport, nice people, and participation are from these companies. So you see our friend and partner in this conference, varebil, is a part of the project as well. It represents all the Scandinavian countries. It represents big companies and small companies. It represents public institutions and private companies as well, interest organizations. So it's a broad view, and based on top of this, we have approximately 25 different companies who've supported the project with knowledge, input, ideas, so on. The purpose is to see, can electric vehicles be integrated into urban logistics? Would it make sense? And will it make sense in the future? Right now, a couple of companies are doing it. I've been listening to a couple of presentations today as well. People saying, we are trying it out. This is what we hear whenever we go out. We are trying it out. This is a test. We want to see it. The 23 for Transit Connect that the Postal Service in Norway has is more or less the highest number I've heard in a single institution in a single country, more or less. It's still in test phase. So we can't really look for best practices. What we can try to do instead is to see if we can find next practice. What might happen? What might be the new best trends? And looking on more than just the technology. This is also about business models. This is about how can we change the way people perceive us and perceive the solution. So, logistics today in the Nordic countries exists in 4 different ways. You either have direct logistics, as it says here, you have a production or a warehouse. Could be Arla in Denmark and Sweden. This is Tina in Norway, who produces milk in a dairy and then delivers it more or less directly to the end shop. Except if you have a crisis on butter. Then you have indirect logistics. This is companies that use a distributor. It could be foreign companies. It could be, this is what happens to more or less every laptop that you have. 93% of them comes from Taiwan, gets imported into a warehouse in Norway where they get distributed off to the shops. This could be one example. This happens as well with Norwegian products. And then we have what we call private logistics, which is where you have several steps before it reaches the end customer. It could be, for instance, what the postal service does. You have some products that go into one postal office, gets distributed to another postal office, which is in the outskirts of Oslo, then distributes it to the small centrals in the center of Oslo, and then uses the mopeds instead of the diesel cars to bring it to the customer. Could be an example. And then we have what we heard a bit, Vicenza talk a bit about, common logistics, where we gather things together in one distribution central and then use one vehicle for several different companies to distribute to the actual companies. We see this also happening right now in Scandinavia. If we then take a look at what are the pollution levels right now, this graph is taken from Denmark and shows how many millions of tons of CO2 we emit every year. It's a 17-year period. And as you can see, in general, it drops slowly, patiently. But if you look at the light blue color, that is transportation. It increases as the only one of these 5 areas. This is not sustainable. Something needs to be done. Another type here. This is Sweden, Stockholm. They have measured how are the NOx emissions in the city. And this is what you see, what they have. You can see since 1982, they've more or less been decreasing until 2008. Then they reached bottom. They can't do anything more, right now at least. So we need a new technology. We need a shift in how we look at the world, at logistics, in order to get this to go even further down. Lastly, there is a third type of pollution that people tend to neglect when we talk about pollutions in cities. It's noise pollution. It's estimated that approximately 40% of inhabitants in all urban cities are submitted to sounds above what the World Health Organization says should be advisable, which is the 55 decibel. But how bad can it be? It's just sound. Well, World Health Organization estimates that in a city like Stockholm or Copenhagen, 500 to 600 lives are lost every year due to diseases directly related to exposure of high noises. That's quite a number in a small city like Copenhagen. So how about Scandinavia? How do we look? Well, basically, there are some similarities between the larger cities we have. Most of all 3 countries have one large city. In Sweden and Denmark, it's a bit larger than in Norway. It's approximately 1 million. And then we have a group of cities between 200 and 500,000 people. The density in these cities are more or less the same, these 3,000 to 4,000 inhabitants per square kilometer. And the average temperature, when it's the lowest, is not that far apart. Apparently, people tend to want to live where it's warmest, even though they have a very big country to live in. But they're also different. There's one reason why I'm not speaking Norwegian to you today. But except the language, there are also elevation differences. In Denmark, we have something we call Sky Mountain. We are very proud of our Sky Mountain. It's 140 meters tall. It's not quite the same as to go biking in Copenhagen as it is to go biking in Oslo. Elevation difference is is big. And incentives, we've heard it several times today. Norway is the world #1 in finding the best incentives to get electric vehicles in the road. Sweden, they are far behind. And Denmark, well, somewhere in there between, not going to grade them. So how does this affect us? What does it give us for possibilities? Well, a lot. But the good thing is that everyone are looking towards opportunities of utilizing electric vehicles. There isn't a single country in the world, I think, that would say, no, we don't want electric vehicles because we want to be dependent on oil and we want to have more CO2 in our country. So basically politicians say, yes, let's do this. We just need to find the money. Can we do it without it? Perhaps. The world is changing. And we've looked at two different figures of how the world might change. If we look at distribution, the length of the chain, the far distance we transport goods might change in the future. There are some people who say that distribution becomes local because what happens is it becomes too expensive to transport goods from Taiwan and back to Norway, to Scandinavia. So we need to have production localized. We need to have it centered based on local raw materials in order to keep prices low. This is what we call local distribution. You'll have something close to the city and don't have to drive as far to get it into the city. On the other hand, what might happen as well is that we centralize everything that is called production because production has to be cheap. So we sort of buy Africa and make it one big production site. That's one scale we look at in the future. On the other hand, we look at a global megatrend. Megacities. We're talking about cities with 20, 30, 40 million inhabitants. And they are starting to earn money because they are Chinese cities amongst some of them. And they want cars. And imagine a 20 million people city where everyone has at least one car. It's rather dense traffic. So if no one does anything, what we'll see is the traffic in the city center will become dense as we've never experienced it before. The world's longest queue was in China, 3 days. That's a long queue. They had to bring out food. How they did it, I think it was in mopeds, but it's completely insane. We couldn't imagine such a thing. It's annoying if we have to wait 15 minutes because we have to get to a meeting. 3 days is something different. What might happen is what Vicenza has been doing to a more extreme degree. They might close down the city center for everything that is not needed, which means only public transportation and urban logistics will go into the city center. These are extreme cases, but they give us some opportunities to look at what could happen. We've made 4 different scenarios called marketplace, microtrains, public goods transportation, city road trains that could happen. So let's dive a bit more into them. The marketplace, it's always been a place where you go and you find the goods of the local farmer. Well, if transportation becomes local, distribution becomes local, we might see that reoccur. We might see specialized developed electric vehicles that are suited for what they are to distribute. So you actually drive into a shop, park the car there, or park a part of the car there, and then you have a shop-in-shop concept. Electric vehicles can drive inside a building without any problems. So this might be something that might happen. Just go in, place a container there, and out pops the nice guy. He sells you some computers. This is made possible through closure of the city, local distribution, and electric vehicles because they can be flexible in the construction. If that would happen, well, sound emissions in the city would drop drastically. In the center of the city, we estimate about 4 decibel and a total CO2 reduction of transportation of approximately 30% because you will have no cars on gasoline or diesel in the city center. On the other hand, if we allow cars to drive into the city, at some point it becomes so critical that you need special pavements or special areas for small-scale vehicles. This picture is taken from Utrecht in Holland. They have a concept there called the cargo hopper. They are exploring it to be utilized in Gothenburg as well. It's a small vehicle. It's not the size of a car. It's small in width, means it's more flexible, and you can see behind it, it has containers. So imagine every company in the outskirts of the city has a container in which they put their goods. It has a battery, so no matter how many this vehicle has to pull, it has the energy because the energy is in each of these trailers. This will be made possible again because we don't have to have a gasoline tank, we don't have to have large combustion engines. This is possible through electric mobility. And this will mean that the actual cars that will be driving in the city center are cars and not lorries and trucks, which take up a lot of space, and they have very bad fuel consumption, and what they lead out into the open air are things we prefer not to have there. Now, what happens then if distribution becomes global? Good thing is we get to use big trucks because we need to get a lot of stuff from one part of the world to the other part of the world. If we close down the city center, this will give us an opportunity to drive directly into the center, find a hub there, redistribute it into small EVs, and then out into where it's needed. The most ecological way to transport things is by big vehicles that don't emit anything. So that could be made possible with this. One of the things here that might be interesting in the future is charging on the fly, having big cars, big vehicles that actually go on highway where they have actually wireless charging. This will be highly effective as well because we leave out all the gasoline cars of the city center and we only have small EVs in the city center and large ones distributing into this distribution hub. The last one is using public transportation. If we have things coming from the outside of the world, all over the world, let's just have a mind game here. Let's say that we are producing a car, a lot of cars. We are, for instance, Volkswagen. We have a production plant in Dresden, and we want to place it in the middle of the city because that looks nice. We get products from all over the world. How do we get them into the city? Because the city is ruined with traffic. Well, what we could do is we could have the trams. It's an infrastructure that is already existing. So they just need to have a distribution hub in the outskirts of the city, utilize the tram can go directly into the production plant, hand off all their goods, and go back again without destroying or disturbing anyone and not being disturbed by other traffic than the other trams. This is done. It's called Cargo Tram in Dresden. This makes it fairly easy and relatively low investments in order to get this up and running, and will actually, again, reduce traffic, reduce noise, reduce CO2 in the city center because we utilize electric transportation in a new way, in an existing infrastructure. Don't forget, I'm sorry about this, but e-mobility is more than just cars. So, new possibilities. These were 4 scenarios that we devised from, it came from 170 ideas based on 3 different iterations and on investigations on how the future could look like through different workshops. So, but some of these ideas I would like to share with you. These are what we call the new possibilities. Hub and spoke. Why should Maersk, why should the Postal Service bring all drive in with different products or different cars just after each other to deliver goods to the same shop? This will mean that we'll actually drive a lot of kilometers in a way that is not necessary. The hub and spoke is the thought of having one central hub where you deliver the goods and then let one company, it could be 2, but a small amount of companies coordinate so that they deliver to the part of the city for several different suppliers. This would mean that some of the companies can focus on long-distance transportation, whereas others can become experts in last-mile delivery. For instance, Bring could be the expert in long-distance delivery, and Postal Service could be in short distance. This could have some economic aspects. reducing distance, less driving, less people to get the goods out. One of the examples that we found is the City Logistics Service in Copenhagen, but it also exists similar projects in France and Holland as well. These things are being explored. I think that most of the cities in the world, they now have a a bike sharing or bike rental service where you go and you pay some money and you take a bike and then park it another place and then get your money back. Why not combine it with some park and ride systems? Why not have the electric bike as a commuter? This is being done in San Francisco. San Francisco it's not mountainish, but it's hilly. It's more than Denmark. So instead of people getting all sweaty from taking the bike to work, they could have an electric bike to go the last 2 miles and then park the car outside the city. It could be an option. Again, moving cars out of the city and then getting them on small, flexible ways of getting back and forth. It's possible. Moving things around is sort of basic. A lot of companies do that now. But we always seem to measure things by container size. We have a whole container, half container. And then we have pallets. We don't have anything less than that as a standard size. Why not? Could it be that we should look upon smaller distribution quotes, 1/4 of a pallet, in a container that can be moved from one vehicle to another very, very quickly without any problems? That could be an option of quickly rearranging from one car to another car, or from a tram to an electric vehicle, or from a large truck to a small truck. But having a modularized system that is more flexible than what we have today. To some extent, it exists in the food business. We see the grocery boxes, they have more or less the same size, but it's a pro forma standard. No one has ever standardized it through, not law, but created a standard that works all over Europe. If we did that, what would happen? Would we actually increase the amount of goods being transported, or would we lower the amount of logistics needed? And then last but not least, one of the issues where electric vehicles really prove their worth is distribution at other times than daytime. For some strange reason, the Italians decided, I would just point out the Italians, they've left. But all over the world we see that a lot of the distribution has to happen at the exact same time when people have to go to work. Which tends to be a bad idea if you look at congestion. I had the pleasure a couple of months ago to listen to a presentation from a university in New York where they said we have made tests on utilizing off-hour deliveries. And they had two groups of people, two groups of companies. There were the companies who had one person in the shop when the delivery was made in the middle of night, and a group of companies that didn't have any people there, in order to see, is this a matter of trust or is it a matter of being aware of what happens? Funny thing is that what they learned is that they could cut times into 1/3. Delivery times were cut into 1/3 through night distribution. And the companies that didn't have people there and nighttime to receive the goods, they say, we love it. We don't have to have any people there to receive the goods. We don't have to concentrate on receiving goods in the daytime. We can focus on what we do best. We sell to customers. And it's nice and quiet. Once we get into the shop, we see the goods there. Nothing to worry about. Everything is in perfect order. Whereas companies, on the other hand, who had a person there said, I really dislike being there in the nighttime. And I go and I wait 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 and I wait, and it's a bugger to be there, and no, we don't want to do this. There's too much insecurity about this. But for those who trust and for those who make the right setup, this is a way of getting quicker distribution, cheaper distribution, and save manpower on getting goods into your shop as well. So to sum it up, what was the purpose of this presentation? What did I want to do with this one? Well, I found this quote, that when it comes to the future, There are three types of people. Those who let it happen, there are those who make it happen, and there are those who wondered what happened. I've tried to give you 4 different views on how the future could be, and I hope that at least you reflect on them long enough to not end up in the last group and wonder what happened when electromobility is here in urban logistics. I'd rather see you be the ones who make it happen, and I know some of you already are. My name is Jens Christian Høj. I'm from the Danish company and cluster organization in Serial Mobility. Thank you very much.